psychotherapist in New York City, but today I am coming to you from Switzerland, 6,000 feet above sea level in Saas-Fee. It's called the Pearl of the Alps because it has 13 peaks that just surround this area. So I'm almost like in a little bit of a bucket. And today I'm going to be talking about the subtypes of the Enneagram 5. If you know me at all, you know that I love the subtypes. It's that extra layer of consciousness that we really need. So I did the overview of the 5s, and it's a really good setup for this deeper dive into the subtypes. What I want to do is kind of watch the sunrise together. It's early here in Saas-Fee, and I think it'll be kind of a cool moment of awe for us, and I think 5s can really get into that place of awe, of just the beauty of a surrounding place that you can lean into and allow just the content to work as something beautiful, not something assaultive or threatening. But we are doing that next level of growth. This is about shadow boxing. If you know anything about the shadow in the psychological terms, it's a term from Carl Jung, and it's really where there is a accumulation of the stuff that we don't want other people to know about, or we don't know about to ourselves. It's not conscious to us yet, or we don't want others conscious about it. So this unconscious part, or the parts that we are hiding, we have to explore, and it can get kind of scary. So I wouldn't tell you anything that I wouldn't tell myself. I tend to be kind of hard on these and really try to dig into where we can grow. But as a 5, you have to look at the parts of you that want to just vanish. The parts of you that don't feel home in your own body. The parts that have to embody. Even the 8, the Enneagram 8, when we lean towards that, to kind of be centered, strong and powerful in our body, to be present, to be strong. So when we transition from one thing to another, often you 5s can compartmentalize a bit. You can just kind of hold things in this place of, okay, I need this to get here. And so you have to take one thing from this box and then put it back in that box and then start playing around a little bit. And it can be a kind of a complicated experience for you. So out of the head types, you know, the 5, the 6, and the 7, you're the most heady. You're the most that's going to get stuck up there to intellectualize and withdraw, to be reserved. But there's also these beautiful things, right? You are observant. You see so much. There is an objectivity that you bring, and an analytical component that you bring, that you are often less reactive. There's a pace that you move to. And yes, I have found that 5s are concerned with others, actually, that there is a part of them that really is attentive to other humans, even though there's this part that wants to get the hell out of there too. So as we think about the subtypes, we have to think about the idea of viriditas, greening, almost like photosynthesis, right? So this part of us that has to grow into ourselves. There is an authority of those who have suffered, and this type of work for you and for me is a type of suffering, type of digging deep and letting ourselves green, ripen. We have to be ready for that at certain moments in our lives. Certain moments we're just not as ready. So maybe you're even in a moment right now where you're starting to explore yourself a bit. Maybe you've let yourself off the hook for a while and something in your life ruffled your feathers. And now there is kind of a necessary suffering, an illuminating grief, something that's bringing to life these things that you need to work on that you haven't been working on. And so just as the sun kind of rises in its pace, we're going to let some of these things come up to the surface for us when we talk about the subtypes, because this is the extra work. For me, this kind of psychoeducation was really scrappy work. And in my own life, I had to get out my psycho-detective magnifying glass to get a little deeper into who I was. Now, I'm a 4. I'm a sexual 4. And so there is a stack, and we are all 3. So I am challenging you to watch all 3 parts, because we are using these in combination together to interact with each other to get the best out of our relationships. but they were defense mechanisms. You know, our primary subtype is a defense mechanism. It's the way we best fight the world with, and we needed it when we were young. And now it doesn't have the same payback. And so if you're in that moment where you're kind of transforming and you're kind of driven towards finding out more about yourself, allow these to interact and understand how they play out in all different scenarios. Now, for me, when I first found it, I really leaned into this quote by Rainer Marie Rilke, and he's one of my favorite writers. And when he saw Cézanne's work in the museum, he did a study on that, just wrote about Cézanne's work. And there was something in Cézanne's work that made him feel like he was missing out on something in life. So when I found this subtype, it was like that for me. It was like, oh shit, here it is. And I'll read this quote to you. I have behind me so many years that are lost or at least have almost eluded me, that I am now ruthlessly living towards a certain entrepreneurship. He was moving towards that more concentrated self. Can I move into myself more and more? Now for you guys, don't make this intellectual masturbation. You know, the fortress of your mind, and you guys have one of those fortresses of the mind, you know, you have different parts. You put things in the cellar and in the attic, in the living room and in the kitchen, and they can get stuck there. And here we're trying to integrate more to have those parts kind of join and collaborate. And so that your isolation and the emptiness you feel, you know, there's so many fives that just feel like they're empty or they don't know what their emotions are, that we can get at the layers of you. You know, I know you guys like to read books, right? You're always in books. So let's even listen to John Steinbeck's words when he says, there are 5 layers in a book. A reader will find as many as he can, and he won't find more than he has in himself. Can you find those extra layers in yourself? You might be intellectually powerhouse, intellectually muscular, but what about the parts that aren't as strong? Maybe you're not emotionally muscular. Maybe you really have to accentuate that part. Maybe you are not in touch with your body. You know, that 8 part that you can lean into, maybe through music, dancing, yoga, martial arts. Maybe this will help you unlock some of the things that are stuck inside of you, and therefore you can move more towards wisdom when knowledge and emotion come together. And again, emotion is a type of knowledge. Don't disown that. So can you tonight, or today, and this morning, download into your mainframe a little bit more content so that you can be more educated psychologically and be greening, becoming more and more ripe and ready to receive. This be in relationships and in your work life, family, romance, and not outsource your emotion to other people who will express those emotions for you. This is my confidence in you that you will be doing that. And hopefully, as we sit here in Switzerland, we just soak it in. Now, I picked Switzerland because I wanted to do the ones here. The ones tend to look a lot like the Swiss. The country's clean. You know, there's not a lot of crime here. They follow the rules like the ones do. They are timekeepers. You know, they make the watches. They put all these gadgets into a knife. There's efficiency. And they are good bankers. So they know how to organize well. But I thought for you 5s, this would be a great backdrop to connect to awe, connect to that curious part of you, the investigative part of you that just wants to soak up different things. This is why you guys are such good travelers, because you take in so much and you look at that and you really explore and dissect a bit. But I want you to dissect with your heart too here, okay guys, not just your head. So let's move into it. We're going to go into the self-preserver, the sexual type, and the social type, and see how they interact with each other, but also try to find out what's your dominant, what's that middle one, that next one, what's your repressed, and hopefully as you connect to them more and more, they'll get like this, and then they'll get like that, So they're working really in conjunction together and you won't even know which one's moving which. Go watch the overview of the 5s. I think it could really help you out. And then also, my name is Drew again. If you need any help individually, get in touch with me. Get in touch with me in my socials or on my website, drew@drewdukirk.com. And hopefully we go on this journey together and enjoy the ride. All right, guys, have a good one. All right, so we're gonna start with the self-preservers. I usually start with the countertype, just that one thing that looks a little different than the others, but I wanna go into the self-preservers first because they are the quintessential 5s. But we need to ground ourselves in a few things. One is, we're always moving from vice to virtue. And in your case, it's from avarice, withholding, to detachment, the virtue being detachment, letting things go, not having to withhold so much. Because withholding is actually impoverishing us often. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't withdraw. This doesn't mean that you can't take time out for yourself. You guys need that more than anyone else. You need your places to retreat to. But the fear is that I will be taken over. There won't be enough of me left. And so we need to move to the openness and the generosity that we can give more, actually, that we have more storehouse than we think we do. That actually, as we give, we will receive. That the withholding actually keeps us from a lot of the fruits of the world. Now, you guys are also in the harmonic type, the triad of the 1s, 3s, and 5s. These are the competency folks. They use logic and sensibilities and appropriate timing to do things. They're thinkers. They take in that information and go, well, what's the next move here? What's my next response? And so even as you're thinking about moving forward, think about how you carefully and calculatedly move forward. Now, I'm going to try to do this in 2 parts for each of these. And in these, I want to do a one part that is just me talking to the camera, and another part that has a background of Switzerland. Something beautiful for you to connect the words and images to. Just take myself out of it and just my words, me doing a voiceover, that you can connect to this beautiful place and hopefully attach to different parts of yourself, allow them to integrate. So let's talk about the self-preserver. I mean, we call them the castle tower types. They have a place, often, physical place, and they have mental spaces that they go to. It's physical manifestations and mental manifestations. They retreat and isolate calculatedly into those places. So the other part of this that's complicated, though, is that they worry more than the other types. They look a little bit more like a 6 in that sense. That worry and anxiety haunt them a bit. I don't need you guys. This one thing that they might say, internally at some level, that I can go it alone. And I could be admired for my independence. Folks that can't handle independence are weak. And you might not be so cold in that. Again, we're all on a spectrum of growth, but some people that are in their younger, more immature states will really get off on withholding from others. A quote I like to use is another Rilke quote, which I think really embodies some of what you guys deal with. If you notice that your solitude is great, rejoice. There is but one solitude, and that is great and not easy to bear. Right? You can even hear him saying that you guys bear it so well. There's a strength in you bearing your solitude. He goes on to say, the necessary thing is after all but this, solitude. Great inner solitude, going into oneself, and for hours meeting no one. This one must be able to attain. Now, he's really accentuating the beauty of going internal or withdrawing from the world a bit. In The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell, he talks about retreating from the world scene. Retreating from the world scene. This is where we can find out a bit more about ourselves. We all need that. And so 5s, you are a great example for the rest of us of how to retreat and how to actually hunker down and play with content. But if you go too far, and then you become the hermit, right? So this number is also called the hermit. And they withhold, they're kind of the true Ebenezers, the Ebenezer Scrooges. I have that story of a friend who's a 5 who I was in an apartment with one day, and I just heard him counting his coins over and over, and I gave him the nickname Ebenezer. This is before I ever knew that he was a 5 or anything about the Enneagram. You guys might get off on that title though, right? Because there is something beautiful to you about withholding. It's about protecting myself with my stinginess, and therefore I feel a bit more superior. Otherwise, I'll be eaten up by the world. You'll take too much of me. I have limited internal resources. I need to save this energy. And it's very self-protective. It's private. And it's limited on your neediness, which, we can kind of get off on as a friend, right? You're not so needy. But you may not actually be present with us. Maybe we want to actually support you. So think about how you hoard. It's not just money. It might not be just things. It might be your emotional energy, your time, your reserves. Now think about also how you carry your body. A lot of self-preserving 5s will talk about their body and their heart and their mind kind of being disconnected. So what are you withholding actually in your body? What are you holding back physically? Like a lot of self-preserving 5s look pretty thin. They withhold even from themselves, might withhold food, very driven to be disciplined in those ways. So watch how stiff you are, how tight you are. Can you engage the center? Can you move towards that 8 where they're really like the Enneagram 8, really embodying what they're experiencing, really being centered and powerful in their body, wearing their body well. That is part of the high side that we need to move towards. It's moving towards the 8 5s. That part of us that is really deeply connected there. So much of your life is in preparation for the things that haven't happened, gaining all the resources to be prepared. And that might even show up in your body. Now, you might look to other people, calm, cool, collected, but internally you might be wiped out. So gauge how actually wiped out you are from just the prep. Because I can almost guarantee that if you loosen that a little bit, you try to get into your body, maybe you do something like yoga or martial arts like I talked about before, dancing, you might get more attached there and might actually find more reserves, more energy. But we can't discount how great of observers you guys are. We can't discount how well you watch. Because even as you watch, sometimes you pick up on social cues that help you engage in the world. And you need that. It's appropriate for you. So we're going to move on to the second part of the self-preservers. But I hope this was just a good intro to this subtype. And as we move forward, just try to get a gauge of where this lies on your stack. Is it the most repressed or the most manifest? And how do you need to integrate the other two and this one together to get more wholeness and fullness? Cool? All right, self-preserving 5s. I hope you use the backdrop of Switzerland and the nature here to just lean in a little bit more towards who you are and who you could be. The self-preserving 5 is much less expressive, more introverted. You could just enjoy your long solitudes. Libraries, rooms, silent retreats, consuming research, privacy, privacy, privacy. If it is true, as the poet says, he has lived well who was well hidden, then I have lived well, says Kierkegaard. For my nook was well chosen. Certain it is, too, that all one hears in the world, or is able to hear, sounds most enchanting and delicious when heard from a nook, where one give ear to stealth. Kind of a cool idea there. I love solitude myself. I love my nooks, my places to hide. Now, hopefully I don't stay there too long. Physical and emotional withdrawal to defend ourselves against the world. I relate. I need it. You self-preserving fives can move into a place of awkwardness, avoidance, and shyness that is beyond what might be healthy. That hermit mentality, to be alone, tucked away, and hidden. So I can get the energy to do even anything. I need that output wattage juice that I can only get in my nook, in my hideout, in those special rooms and caves and designed for specific types of energy I can get. They're sacred. Otherwise, I'll be invaded. Too much energy will be taken from me. Now, you can notice, you self-preserving fives, that you want to live on the edges, not too much in the front or the middle, kind of in the back or in the sides and the margins. To observe. And again, that observance is great. We get so much out of it. Because usually you can, with fine-tuned precision, help us understand things we wouldn't otherwise see because we are stuck in the middle or in the front. I love that about you guys. Here is a quote from one of my favorite writers, and I think you'll hear him throughout, Rainer Maria Rilke, in a book he wrote called The Notebooks of Malt Lourdes Bridge. It's kind of like almost a little bit of a self-discovery book that he wrote in his 20s. And he says, I am sitting here reading a poet. There are a large number of people in the room, but one is unaware of them. They are in the books. At times they move among the pages like sleepers turning over between two dreams. Ah, how good it is to be among people who are reading. Why are they not always like this? You can go up to one and touch him lightly. He feels nothing. And if you happen to jostle against the next man as you get up and apologize, he nods in the direction of your voice, with his face turned towards you, but not seeing you. And his hair is like the hair of someone sleeping. How pleasant that is. And I am sitting here and have a poet. What good fortune. I'm sure you guys relate. It's this idea that I can immerse myself in content. I can immerse myself in writing. I can escape from the world scene, as Joseph Campbell says. But while we appreciate how alert your senses are, sound, visual, smell, touch, you also can be, in a sense, haunted by your awareness. You have a sixth sense for need, the need of others in you, the need to take from you. What are people wanting from me? You're probably asking in certain moments. That sensitivity creates these strong boundaries and non-involvement. And that non-involvement is also connected to this detachment. Now, fives are interesting in that they need to detach from how much energy they think they need. And at the same time, they're super good at detaching from people. You're constantly waiting for the bell to ring so you can leave the room and get into your own places. But you are expecting and preparing for extreme cases. So I'm going to challenge you as we move out of the self-preservers to just appreciate the energy you have and that it is meant to be expended at some level. That you can engage and learn how to connect with us a bit more. Allow the feelings to emerge and be processed. And yeah, you'll need some alone time for that. But then, after you're replenished, you're retreated, you get replenished, now you got to release. Take a risk and give some energy. This is the movement towards growth for you. To detach from this obsessive need to have energy, space, time, and not have regrets in the end that you didn't give enough. Because in that giving, I swear to you, you will get. You will receive. Cool? All right, let's talk about one of my favorite types of people, the intimate 5 or the romantic 5, or some call this 5 the secret agent. It's the sexual 5, the one-on-one 5. And I'd like to dedicate this one to my man JV. You know who you are. You've taught me a lot about the sexual 5. The sexual 5 looks a lot like a 4, and I'm a 4, so that might be why I like the sexual 5 so much. I actually think that the sexual 5 might often have a 4 wing. You know, it's just more common there that 4 part is engaged. They're much more emotional than most 5s. But they have this tension, constant tension between intimacy and freedom. Intimacy and freedom. This is why they are the countertype. They tend to be a bit more engaged, less detached. Now, it is also mostly on 1 or 2 people or a small group, but the countertype is always kind of counter-passional. So they're counter avarice. They actually give a lot in certain cases. They still are a 5, but there's this part of them that does the opposite. It actually expends a lot of energy in relationship. And so that counter-passional type, we have to be conscious that at times they will type differently. They're going to be often a little bit misunderstood, or people will think they're one thing and they're actually another thing. So this is where you guys are probably going to, at times, look a bit like a 4. Maybe even type as a 4. You're more curious about people. You're asking a lot of questions. You ever been with a 5? You know, I've been with 5s that just ask tons of questions. And also, often that is the sexual 5. They just want to know. They want to get in there. They want to investigate. And some of it's a defense, so they don't have to talk about themselves, but they love the novel. Not, I mean, a book novel, but like novel people, novel things. That's interesting. I want to know more about that. So there's a bit more juice there. There's a bit more energy. They're a bit more even connected to their body. I like to talk about this quote. You know, I've been slamming you guys with quotes, but the reason I'm doing it is because I know you guys often like to read. Not everybody, not all 5s do. Not all 5s are intellects, but I think that it really grounds a 5 to have some resources. So here's Ernest Becker. Now, this is my favorite book of all time, or at least to this point, in the self-help world. He won a Pulitzer for this book in the 70s. And it's really a culmination of his work on studying Freud, Carl Jung, and this guy named Otto Rank. And it's about getting in touch with that part of us that is denying death to protect ourselves and to get a little closer to it. So in the book, The Denial of Death, he says this: he enjoys solitude and withdraws periodically to reflect, perhaps nurse his ideas about his secret self, what it might be. In what way is one truly unique? And how can he express this uniqueness? Give it form, dedicate it to something beyond himself, to enrich both himself and mankind. When you guys become healthy, you allocate more energy to the broader community. You actually, I think, move from that secret agent type of 5, that one that wants secret moments with people and in themselves, to actually approach more and retreat less. So again, there's this conflict for this countertype. They're constantly in this battle between approaching and being intimate and retreating and having freedom. You might really relate to this. You know, you want to be in and you want to be out at the same time. I don't want to let people know my secret world too much. I don't want to be naked. I don't want to be revealed, but I also do. I want to be known. And you want people to reciprocate. And when they don't, actually, the sexual 5 can really be hurt. When the people that they want to be so intimate with don't reciprocate, they are easily overwhelmed and kind of emotional. And this is where that 4-ish part comes in. I've spent times with sexual 5s that can easily weep, can easily feel their sadness and their anger. They're a bit more transparent. And so this is why they might mistype as a 4, and even a 9, where the 9 actually, though, is a bit more aloof. And that might be that part of the 5, the sexual 5, that's a little bit more aloof. There's some that are a bit more like locked in, and that might be where they look a bit more like a 4. But they have that intense desire to merge with someone or their small group. There's a more dreaminess there, an irreality at times. They want something that actually often isn't real or can't be real. It's too fantasy. And a lot of times they'll do that in relationships. They want a relationship to be a bigger thing than it can be. And so they're putting pressure on it, and they squeeze, in a sense, that other person. And they're also people who don't want to be squeezed. They don't want to be engulfed, but they end up doing it themselves to another person. If they actually pulled back a little bit, they might get actually a better response. Because in that desire for shared secrecy, and that desire for deep intimacy, that one-on-one component might actually become blown up a bit. So while you're the most expressive of the 5s, what you have to actually watch out for is that you don't engulf somebody or eat them up like you don't want to be eaten up. Maybe even think about in your life where you felt overwhelmed by maybe parent or a sibling or the community at large. And now, in a sense, you are even playing out that part that is engulfing someone else. And if you pulled back a little bit, that relationship could actually breathe. So it's just a warning. I'm sure if you're in a healthy spot, you don't do that as much, or you've worked through that, but it's just something to watch out for. So as we move into the second part, where it's just gonna be my words and visual, I want you to think about those folks in your life that you are connecting with and how you can enhance those relationships, maybe even by pulling back. All right, love you, sexual 5s. You're some of my favorite people. I love your minds. I love your hearts and how they operate together. And I love your passion. So stay in that place. And if you have that as your secondary or you're repressed, try to integrate that in a little bit more. Lean towards that 4 a bit. Where, like myself, my world is a bit more imaginary, it's filled with emotion. And you don't need to become a 4. But just to integrate it will actually, I think, enhance your life. See? Those bells are saying this is true. Drew is right. All right, as we use the backdrop of Switzerland, we add this in, is that you guys must lean into trust. Trust that the relationship can be something that grows organically, that you become closer and closer. You do not have to push it so much. In a sense, that greed or avarice is towards wanting this other character, this other person, wanting to, in a sense, engulf them. And you might miss how you are affecting other people. The sexual 5 is a bit more confident and passionate, bold and assertive. So they can overwhelm folks. And that secretive part, that trade craft, like CIA, the infiltrator, the person who wants to know and get deep, also has to give and give a bit more so that there is a lot of mutuality in this. And also give a bit to those who are harder to give to not be so secretive. You guys are more sensitive. And that pursuit of strong connection can make you suffer. When we idealize our relationship, when we idealize that partnership and invest so much of it, well, we have to give room for that other person to have secrets with others and have private moments with others. That they don't just immerse themselves with you. Now ask yourselves, have you idealized love? Have you leaned towards trust enough? Just want to leave that there for a second for you to feel into it. I've seen you guys, like 8s, demand fidelity. Put the highest standards on these relationships. And in a sense, try to hoard that relationship. Of course, you have this desire for deep and long conversation and connection. That's beautiful. But what are you asking for in return? If I give myself to this, I will require a lot. Be close. Also, though, there's that part of you, remember we talked, is in battle with freedom and intimacy, attachment and connection, and detachment. So there's that part that says, be close, and there's that part that says, be gone. Get out of here. I don't want you around. Learn how to play with that dynamic. You can't have full independency and full immersion. You guys, just like the 8s, can fall into that, take me or leave me. Only a tight few matter. And again, when it's only a tight few, losing them could be devastating for you. What do I do? And therefore, I think a lot of sexual 5s become the victim. They feel abandoned and neglected. They feel like they're not getting enough. If you don't reciprocate my love and my intimacy in the same way, well, then I can't really be understood. I can't really do this again. I can't really give myself to somebody again. So they can withdraw and take on that mopey, kind of undignified, deep position of victim. It's kind of self-sabotage. So I'm going to leave you with these words to meditate on. And they're from C.S. Lewis. I've used C.S. Lewis a bit in this. And I want to continue because I think he allowed some of the deep relationships in his life, specifically with his brother, with the Inklings, this group of other professors, J.R.R. Tolkien, the writer of Lord of the Rings, to help enhance his life and give him feedback. And late in life, he fell in love. And as he fell in love, this woman got cancer and died. And he wrote these words, "To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it up carefully, round with hobbies and little luxuries and other entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable. To love is to be vulnerable." I commend you, sexual 5s that look a little like a 4. To love well. Be willing to be hurt, because your sensitivity could lead you towards hiding. So this is my call on you to practice being in a position in which you could get hurt and trust that people have your best intentions at heart. Cool? All right. All right, we are coming down to the end here, and we're going to do the social types. This is your professor types. We also call them the totem types. And as the sun is about to peak up over those peaks, here in Saas-Fee, the pearl of the Alps, these 13 peaks that surround me, well, we get to kind of talk about these magnificent characters, the social types here, the professors, right? The people that actually can be pretty intimidating. And so why do we say that there's kind of a totem mentality here? Well, the social types can be a bit more engaged with other humans, but there is a hierarchy that they concentrate on. Who is interested in the same things I am, or who can lend me their wisdom? Who has similar ideals and values? And so there is a hierarchy that the social types will engage with. They still have the plan to be social like other social types, but like most 5s, they still need to have the right energy and they need the right combo to be energized. New people still act as a burden to them, but they can get really juiced up by having individuals who stimulate them intellectually and have similar mindsets and drive. So their avarice, their withholding, is to folks who don't end up being involved in their cause or their belief system, that shared belief system. They want to dispense their resources that they've acquired towards folks who will really appreciate it. So they can look a lot like a 7 here. All the numbers have a little bit, or all the subtypes have a little bit of this, like they can look a little bit like something else. They look a little bit like a 7. The 7 probably wouldn't research as much and dig deep as much into specific topics. They're going to jump all over the place with their level of interest in things, but they can be highly concentrated. Highly concentrated thinkers, the 7s. And they and the 5s have to acknowledge that there is things they don't need to know or they can't know. And so 5s, especially you social types, think about how much you covet or desire that knowledge and the people who have similar knowledge, and how you're alienating other folks. I know that I can be a bit intimidated at times by the social 5 because there is kind of a superiority in their intellect that they magnify, and they can be kind of cold and distant, still leaders and passionately committed, but also sometimes cold and distant. And so they need to be idealized, and there's a little bit of a hero worship that they desire. Maybe not you. Maybe you're in a healthy place and you have a good distance from your need to be admired. But if I give you my thoughts and my mind and my ideas, I can be valued, but I don't want to give you too much of my time and space. So there is this distance there, right? They're giving you something in an extroverted sense. And there's an extroverted component to it. And they're sharing something. But it's very much sometimes the content and not the process of relationship afterwards. And I've noticed that with a lot of social types in the 5 realm, is that there's an emphasis on content but not process. Process is where we learn a lot of the emotional components of what we are taking in. And so you guys have to be concentrated on that a little bit. Be careful about making us, the non-5s, look like boobs. Look like idiots. There's those classic moments, whether it's like the tech guy who needs to teach you something and is like, oh my gosh, you don't know that? The simplest thing. We don't do the same type of research as you guys in certain areas. And so be gentle with us. We need a little grace that we don't have those same capacities. Social 5s can be in and out at the same time. So there is that engagement with the world, but also that real need to have their places, their caves too, their dens that they can go to. They're looking for superior and elite groups. So they want to be in those groups of collectively competent people. Remember, this is the competent triad, the 1s, 3s, and 5s. Competency is important to these types. And so being with other competent people is really important to them. And do I have a place in the group? Can I pass ideas and concepts back and forth with you? Can I play some intellectual ping pong with you? Can I play catch with you with ideas? And so therefore they often really into a niche topic that they can be the expert at. So they do have something to pass to other people. Where do I stand in this group? How can my deep dives into ideas be passed on to these people and I can be respected? What is my role? Am I important here? Am I recognized? Is there a power dynamic that I can actually lean into? So I am going to connect to people through knowledge and find my worth there. Get off on being the expert and that ping pong of ideas and topics back and forth. But still give me my autonomy. Don't take too much from me. So let's move into this second part. But like I said, just be aware, social 5s, that the people that you're actually giving this knowledge to, they do have hearts also. And so have an awareness of how you are coming off. This is part of your growth. Detach, right? So the detachment part, the virtue, is detaching from the withholding. And the withholding there is, I'm withholding this knowledge, or I'm holding it and giving it to you. But it's because, I can get a lot of worth from it. And as you detach from your need to kind of lord information over people, then I think you will actually get more energy, and that generosity of giving to others will actually be a reward to you also. Cool? All right, let's move on to the second part. With the background of Switzerland, I want to further dig deep into the social five, to both give you a warning, but then end with just a beautiful expression of two people who really leaned into their social five sense. Now, what I just said was that you guys can come off poorly because you concentrate on the task so intensely. You may feel most judged by a social five. Dumb, inadequate, stupid. Because you often have to enter into their area of expertise. But if you can stay detached as a experiencer of you social fives, me in response to you, then we'll likely learn something. Because your pursuit is omnicompetence, a certain type of intelligence that is just so powerful and magnificent, which isn't such a bad thing. You're so purpose-driven and don't want to waste your time on other things. You can be better at interacting, especially with people who are into the purpose or mission that you are involved with. Jerry Seinfeld asked David Letterman before he was going to do the show Seinfeld. He was working with NBC to get it off the ground, and he was on Letterman's show right before that, and they talked a little bit about it. And Letterman said to him, "Find a torture in life you are comfortable with, and you will do well." Whether it is work or exercise or eating, whatever it is, that torture, the social five is usually willing to go into. And so they could not want to be involved in frivolous conversation oriented towards small and simple things. The conversation must serve the end. But here's the warning. I want you to reflect on Carl Jung's words, though. When asked at the end of his life, what was his pilgrim's progress? Or in a sense, what was the main thing he learned throughout his journey? He said, in my case, my pilgrim's progress consisted in my having to climb down 1,000 ladders until I can reach out my hand to the little clod of earth that I am. So in a sense, what he's saying is, I am from dust, and to dust I will go. All of the intellectual pursuits I had, all of the knowledge I gained, all of the wisdom that I have dispensed, I am still dirt. And this is how the avarice can move towards the virtue of detachment. Detaching from how much importance you put on this knowledge that you are gaining. But let's look at the bright side. Your identity is established in the group, and it provides safety. You are important and respected. And so deep calls to deep, as they say. There's a gravitational pull between deep folks that have some kind of gift. We attach to each other. And I'm going to bring this up again. I use this in the overview of the fives. That J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote the Lord of the Rings series, and C.S. Lewis, who wrote massive amounts of content on Christianity and in fantasy, they became friends, and they started the Inklings. And the Inklings were this group of men, teachers, professors, who gravitated towards each other and became best friends. But before that, before Tolkien went to war, World War I, he had a group of young men that he was friends with, all academics, and they were called the Coalbiters, or Kolbitar from Icelandic. Men who lounge so close to the fire in the winter that they bite the coal. And he said, before he went to war, they held a council because they knew they were going to maybe death. And they talked late into the night, sharing with one another their deepest convictions and aspirations. Given their evident loyalty to one another throughout the war years, they must have vowed to preserve their fellowship in whatever way they could. Tolkien later said it was at this moment that he first became aware of the hopes and ambitions that would propel him throughout his life. This group gave him more purpose and awareness of what he was into. The Inklings, which was the group later on, the professors that Tolkien and C.S. Lewis created this group, they met for 16 years together. And Lewis said, "What I owe them is incalculable. Is any pleasure on earth as great as a circle of friends by a good fire?" Again, that idea of fire, this is where people gravitate to really learn about each other. And these intellectuals were gaining more information about themselves. Actually, C.S. Lewis inspired Tolkien to write the Lord of the Rings series and The Hobbit. It was just an idea and something he was playing around with. And C.S. Lewis said, no, you've got to go and write this. And Tolkien explained later, only from him did I ever get the idea that my stuff could be more than a private hobby. But for his interest and unceasing eagerness for more, I should never have brought the Lord of the Rings to a conclusion. I owe him an unpayable debt. It was sheer encouragement. He was for a long time my only audience. You guys gravitate towards colleagues or people of similar interests and values and intellectual sharing. That's great. We receive so much from you guys because of it. That research, when it moves towards teaching and is exported out of your insides and your expertise, your authority, your intellect and heft and stout, move towards giving that to the world. It is beautiful. Don't get bogged down in hoarding it. Cool? All right, that's my challenge to you folks. Go out, get connected to those people, and use it for good. All right, folks. Well, that was the subtypes of the fives. I always really get off on doing the subtypes. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to get into the nitty gritty and figure out how these 9 numbers really become 27. 27 different types. So I hope you found yourself in this and you were able to zero in a little bit, and then you are going to try to hopefully integrate these together. Now, again, my name is Drew. I'm a therapist in New York, but I'm hanging out in Switzerland. I hope you enjoyed the backdrop of Switzerland. Hope this was just like a little different edge to thinking about the subtypes with beauty behind it, with a backdrop of beauty behind it. Again, if you need any help individually, reach out to me. You have my socials, and I hope you subscribe, because I'm going to keep on putting out this content and hopefully do all the numbers and have a good dearth of knowledge for you fives who love to soak up the knowledge. As I always say at the end of all of my videos, everything is yet to be done, everything, in the words of Rainer Marie Rilke. So I hope you've enjoyed Switzerland. I'm just going to check it out a little bit. Oh, and hear those bells ringing. It's a great place to end. All right, guys, have a good one.